Okay, I'm Jason from bowhuntingroad.com. I'd like to talk about my own personal strategy for hunting new pieces of public ground. I've been hunting public grounds for the last 20 years, and these are just a few things that have made me successful over this time. One of the first things I like to use is the internet. This is prior to any out-of-state trip, whether it be hunting or just to go out and scout. The first thing I like to do is do a search. You can do a simple Google search on the internet, and it'll bring up either old hunting magazine articles or a blog or a hunting forum like Archery Talk or Bow Site. You'd be amazed at how much information you can get just by doing some research on the internet prior to your trip. In addition, I like to look at aerials. I probably spend more time looking at aerials on the internet than I do anything else. People have their favorites. Most people prefer Google Maps. I prefer Bing Maps for their bird's eye feature. It kind of gives you an angled view. They're taken during the winter where there's no foliage, so you can see a lot of detail. This will include old logging roads or gas well roads, places that you can barely see in the summer when foliage is on the ground. In addition to looking at those, I like to print them out and put them in a binder for when I do make a trip. I don't like to rely on my mobile phone much because some of these areas are isolated and have very limited service. So having a physical reference with spots marked prior to arriving there, it helps a great deal, because once you get there, a lot of things in your head will go cloudy and you just won't remember certain spots and certain reasons why you picked those. So I like to take those along. I put them in a binder. It's a quick reference. Once you get there to a spot, you can quickly ID an area just from the aerial to actual seeing it in person. Most recently, we made a trip this past Labor Day weekend to Iowa. This was just to hang stands and do a little scouting before the fall. I've hunted this area. This will be my third trip bow hunting this western portion of the state. I was out there this spring turkey hunting, so I did a little scouting then as well. Prior to, once I arrived to an area, we like to drive around in the evenings and in the mornings just to see what the deer do in general, where they could be found. In addition, on this trip, I was able to talk to a local resident. He's a farmer. He's actually a big buck hunter. He manages this property, and he also leases farm and tillable ground from the state. This was good because he was able to tell me, as a farmer, where he sees the most crop damage, where he sees the most deer. And in addition, he was born and raised in this area of the state, so he actually gave me a lot of good info. Unfortunately, it was towards the end of my trip, so I didn't get to hang a stand. I was able to check out a few spots though. I'm going to show you a couple spots that I chose for this fall. Again, these are just spots that I'll hit initially. I'll fine tune them if I need to. When hunting public ground, you can hunt all the deer sign you want, but once hunting pressure gets on those deer, they're going to change their
This
pattern
first track was
completely.
an isolated area, probably about 150 acres. It was off a little dead-end road. We found it during this past spring turkey hunting. It had some isolated agricultural fields, and there was some pretty good private property off to the east as well. In addition, the access to the south was kind of limited due to the thick terrain. Upon scouting it this past Labor Day weekend, I saw a lot of trails. It looked like movement for the most part now coming off of standing corn, traveling north and south, going back to bed and on the private land to the north. Again, this had like an isolated cornfield in this valley. There's a lot of deer sign, a lot of damage. In addition, there's beans up towards the road and towards the parking area. So there's plenty of food in the area to hold deer, for the most part, up until season. Again, there was a pretty good section of private property off to the east. For the most part, it looks to be pretty thick and maybe hold some deer and provide some good bedding area and sanctuary for them. This next piece is one I'd hunted prior. Back in 2009. It was a pretty appealing place because off to the north it's private property. There's absolutely no hunting allowed. and there was a long finger, a lot of cedars, thick cedar, old fence row that run right down the center. I position my stand on a point, but if due to the proximity to the road, if there's any pressure, I'll move back further up. There's a couple big ridges and side hills that I could position on where there's plenty of deer movement in the evenings and in the mornings. This is some of the predicted movement. I mean, it's kind of hard to pinpoint it until I'm actually there, but for the most part, I predict a north to south, which will be fine with the west wind. Here you can see there's a state park to the north, basically providing a sanctuary for these deer to stay and feel safe.
So just to recap, what I've talked about, there is no off season for the successful bow hunter. You have 4 or 5 months during the summer. Do plenty of research. Get on the internet. Make phone calls. Read magazines, blogs. Follow us on bowhuntingroad.com. There's plenty of tips and tricks you can use to better enhance your hunting experience, especially for the traveling hunter. A lot of people do it on a limited budget and with limited time, so the most you can make of that time, the better. Give yourself plenty of places to hunt when you do go out of state or you go to a new place, because you're more likely on public ground. You're going to encounter other hunters as well. We have to share the space, so just adapt. It's easy to get overwhelmed and mentally drained when you have an intrusion of people. I've had this problem several times, but you just have to, like I said, adapt and overcome. And also, like my recent trip to Iowa, the deer sign there was overwhelming, more so than here in my state of Ohio. So basically my stands are preliminary sets. I'll fine tune them once I'm out there. I plan 7 or 8 days. I'll give myself plenty of time, so if I see deer movement in or around my stands and I think I need to adapt or adjust my set, then do it. Don't wait. Don't wait 2-3 days. Go ahead and do it now. Be right on top of those deer when you see different movement and patterns. And also, probably the most important is going to be the hunting pressure. I've said this several times. The deer, especially mature deer, they're not going to tolerate much of it. So like I said, if you pull into a spot, you see 3 or 4 trucks, generally, like, I'll just go in, I'll pull my set. I'll either move to another portion of the property or just go up the road to another entirely different piece. So these are just some of my own personal tactics that I use to hunt public land. It's a good resource that we have and we're lucky to have, but obviously we have to share with everybody else. So do as much research as you can before you go, and cut down on the amount of time that you're going to spend scouting when you get to a new piece. And hopefully you have good luck this fall.